Coming to paperback and e-readers in 2021, John Haynes, Taking Care of Business. The man who rules the world breaks on a brand new partner to help him take care of business in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Taking Care of Business in 2021 at online booksellers everywhere.
Last night, rapper and music mogul Dr. Dre was rushed to a Los Angeles ICU after experiencing a brain aneurysm. And after it was announced on mainstream media that Dr. Dre had suffered this brain aneurysm, many took to social media spreading a whole lot of misinformation regarding brain aneurysms. Now, as a brain aneurysm survivor for the past 40 years, I can tell you that a lot of the information that is being spread on social media regarding Dr. Dre's brain aneurysm is a lot of it is going to be completely false. Now, there's this rumor that this brain aneurysm that Dr. Dre suffered was because of stress as related to his divorce from his wife, Nicole, but that is not the case at all. Now, a brain aneurysm is something that most people usually are born with, and it is related to the 5 arteries that go throughout the body, because as related to aneurysms, they are related to pockets that are formed on one of those 5 arteries, and these pockets oftentimes they fill with blood, and as they are filling with blood, most people don't even know that they have a serious condition going on, and oftentimes this condition can go undiagnosed for years. So a person can go on for years in their life with an aneurysm in their body, like Kevin Sorbo did when he was filming Hercules, and he had an aneurysm in his arm, but thankfully the doctors were able to identify it and they were able to treat it, and Kevin Sorbo was able to continue going on filming Hercules, the Legendary Journeys. But a lot of people, they never get the aneurysm diagnosed by a doctor, and oftentimes they go on with their lives not knowing that they have a time bomb going on inside of their body. So a lot of people will be just going about their everyday lives like I did when I was 7 years old, and they won't even know that this whole artery has a bubble in it, and this bubble is about to burst. And when it bursts, what happens is you get one of 3 outcomes as related to brain aneurysms. One, a person can practically die instantly from a brain aneurysm if that brain aneurysm is big enough, because once that pocket bursts, that artery, that stops the flow of blood throughout the body, and that can lead to a person dying instantly. That is the first and possible tragic outcome of a brain aneurysm, and this death happens almost instantly because it just comes out of nowhere. Now, the second outcome that can happen to a person who experiences a brain aneurysm is that this brain aneurysm can wind up bursting, and because the person does not really know what's going on, they wind up falling down and passing out, and then what happens is the flow of blood to the brain practically stops, and this person can lose most of their motor control, and they can just stop functioning altogether. And while the person may survive, the person may wind up practically becoming a vegetable as a result of them not being able to keep blood flowing to the brain. So that is the second tragic outcome that can happen to a person who experiences a brain aneurysm. They can become a person who survives the experience. Unfortunately, they wind up losing their ability to have motor control, and they wind up losing the ability to be able to make their body function like it did before. So that's the other tragic outcome. And some people, they either wind up partially paralyzed, and some people practically wind up where they become a complete vegetable, because what happens is they don't know that this pocket is forming on their arteries, and when it erupts, what happens is it just winds up making their body just completely stop functioning. And if they don't get enough help in time, this condition can wind up permanent. Or the third thing that can happen in a case of a brain aneurysm is that you can have this artery burst in your brain, and then you might be able to get to the doctors in time, and they may be able to perform surgery like they did in my experience. Now, when I was 7 years old and I was taken to the hospital, the doctors were able to diagnose the brain aneurysm. They were able to perform surgery, and they were able to remove the blood clots that had formed in my brain. Now, this is what happens when the doctors can get to the person in time. And unlike in 1981, where they had to actually cut open a person's head and go in there to get to these arteries, because I have a scar on the right side of my head as a result, technology has evolved, and they can now insert stents into these arteries in an effort to clear them. So technology has evolved for people like Dr. Dre and Kevin Sorbo, and it has enabled them to not have to deal with the disfiguring scars that I had to deal with back in 1981. So the technology has evolved, and from the looks of things as related to Dr. Dre, who sent out a message, things are looking good for him, because your Dr. Dre was able to be coherent. Now, when I was 7 years old, before I had the surgery, I was coherent and I was able to function somewhat. So I was able to still be able to speak and talk and still able to walk and things like that. And again, that is an extremely positive sign for Dr. Dre, that he's still able to function, because if you're not getting to the doctor in time, what will happen is your blood will continue to not be able to flow to the brain, and you won't be able to function, and you will start to lose some of your mental functions like motor control, and you'll lose things like your ability to see or speak. And this has happened to some people, again, who suffered brain aneurysms. They lost their motor control, and they lost their ability to go out here and see and speak, because if they don't get to it in time, what happens is you start to lose function, because if blood is not flowing to the brain eventually will shut down. Now, the other big problem with brain aneurysms is the whole social stigma that is related to them. And a lot of people out here, when they hear that somebody has had a brain aneurysm, they will oftentimes think that that person has lost cognitive capacity. And that's what I experienced growing up as a boy after I came out of the hospital at 8 years old, because a lot of people did not know anything about brain aneurysms, and a lot of misinformation was spread regarding my condition. So some people thought that because I experienced this brain aneurysm, they thought I was slow. Others thought I was retarded. And some people thought I should be in special ed, and others thought I should be out here collecting SSI for disability. But I had full cognitive capacity, and I was able to perform well in school, and I was able, by the time I got about 15, 16, I was practically at the top of my class when I switched schools from Park West to Taft High School. And by the time I got into my 20s and I was in college, I had graduated at the top of my class with a 3.95 GPA, and I had won an award from the college I had went to. So it is possible for someone who has had a brain aneurysm to go on with their lives, and it takes a lot of courage to persevere in the face of having a brain aneurysm and still go on, because again, once you come out of the hospital, you're not only dealing with recovering from this condition, you are also dealing with people's perception of you. And that's what I had to deal with ever since I was 8 years old. I had to deal with people's negative perceptions regarding my mental ability. Many people thinking, oh, because I had this brain aneurysm, I must be slow, I must be mentally disabled, and I may not be able to think and function like other people. That's what they were thinking, because they think because something happened to your brain, something it impaired your ability to think. But over the years, I have always made an effort to try to prove to people, that this brain aneurysm did not impede any of my ability to think or my ability to function as an adult. I always wanted to, ever since I was 8 years old, to go out here and show people that I could go out here and do like everybody else, and I could work like everybody else, and I could perform on the same level as everyone else. That is something I have always tried to do ever since I was 8 years old, because so many people thought that I was disabled. I wanted to show them that I could function just like everybody else, and I always strived for excellence because I always wanted people to see that I could perform on the same level. So that's one of the other problems with a lot of people, especially in the black community, because especially in the black community where there's a lot of ignorance that goes on, people will go out here and they'll hear, oh, Dr. Dre had a brain aneurysm, so that means that Dr. Dre now is cognitively impaired. And that's probably why somebody thought, after they heard this news, they wanted to break into his home, because they think Dr. Dre is cognitively impaired and they think they're going to take advantage of him. And that's something I've run into in my own life, people thinking that they're going to try to take advantage of me, but then they find out I know just as much as they do. And then there were the people who think that they're going to talk down to me, and I've run into that myself, because some people, they think that because this has happened, to me, that they're going to talk down to me and talk to me like I'm a child. And I've run into that quite a few throughout all my growing up and going to junior high school and high school. Run into that a lot. And again, that all comes from people's misperceptions about brain aneurysms, because they're thinking that because some people, they wind up losing their motor control, that it affects their mental capacity. But it does not affect your mental capacity. A brain aneurysm is a biological thing. And again, it's a lot of times, it's a ticking time bomb. And most people don't know they have this time bomb in either the arteries in their arms or the arteries in their legs, or even worse, the artery in your brain. So people don't know that this artery has a pocket on it. This pocket is filling with blood, and that at any given time, this pocket can burst. And if this pocket bursts, especially if it's on the brain or the brain stem, it can practically either kill a person instantly, or it can lead to a person winding up losing their ability to use their motor control. And it can or in the best case scenario, the person can have this happen and then still be able to function. Now, the only thing that happened to me is that I wound up losing some vision in my left eye, but thank God all I lost was a little vision in my left eye. The rest of me still works fine, and I've, again, tried to go on with my life, even in spite of all of the negative perceptions. I still go out here and persevere, and I've gone out here and, again, written close to 75 books after having a brain aneurysm, which should show people how this does not impair anybody's cognitive ability or mental capacity in any way, shape, or form. As somebody who has survived an aneurysm for 40 years, I can tell you that Dr. Dre, from the looks of things, is going to be perfectly fine. And again, he sent out that message, and again, showing that message showed me that he is going to be perfectly fine. And as an aneurysm survivor, seeing the technology and how it has evolved, Dr. Dre will be in good hands, because once he has the stent, and he will probably look just like he does right now, and he won't have a disfiguring scar like I have. So he's going to be perfectly fine, and as I see it, he should be all right because they got to it in time. Now, again, a brain aneurysm has absolutely nothing to do with stress. It has nothing to do with Dr. Dre being stressed about a divorce. This is something that could happen to anyone at any time, and this is something that can just come out of nowhere, because I remember being 7 years old in 1981, and I remember being in the bathtub at 7 years old when that brain aneurysm happened. Because when I was 7, I was just thinking about, my mother was giving me a bath, and I was just thinking about getting back in time so I could watch some TV, and then all of a sudden this happened, and then everything just went black. So this can happen to anyone, and it can happen because you just don't even know it's there. And again, even sometimes doctors can miss this, because oftentimes you need an MRI or an EKG or an EEG in order to find these aneurysms. So oftentimes most doctors in a basic regular visit, they might possibly miss this, because you need specialized equipment like in the EKG back in the 80s or an MRI right now in order to be able to identify these brain aneurysms. So when I look at Dr. Dre, I may not like the man, and I may think that he's a sellout, and I may not like the way he has treated the black community, but I would not wish a brain aneurysm on Dr. Dre after experiencing it and experiencing the aftermath of it for the last 40 years. I mean, a brain aneurysm is one of the worst things that could ever happen to a human being. And what's even worse than the brain aneurysm is the aftermath of that brain aneurysm and the social stigma that comes from having a brain aneurysm, trying to explain things to people as related to your cognitive ability, and trying to go out here and trying to navigate a life after you've had this, where you have people thinking that you are slow, some people thinking you're mentally disabled, having employers tell you that they don't want to hire you for jobs. I mean, it's practically, again, been a nightmare for me for the last 40 years in some cases after experiencing this brain aneurysm. And it's something that I have survived, and I still try to go on with. And I know how bad this is. And again, Dr. Dre, he will be physically all right, and with therapy, he should be back to being who he is. But the greatest challenge for him, and I can tell him that from my own personal experience, is overcoming people's negative perceptions about you and overcoming people's negative ideas about you, because most people, they're going to think that because you had this brain aneurysm that you are having a decline in your cognitive abilities. They're going to think that your mental capacity isn't the same. They're going to think you're slow. They're going to think that you're not as smart as you used to be. But the whole thing is that you are just as smart as you always were, and you always were that person, but people don't want to see it because they think that because this happened to you, your brain has changed, but your brain really has not changed. You're still the same person. But this is something most people, again, because they have a miseducation about brain aneurysms, they think that because a person experienced this, that they've had some cognitive decline, and they think that the person can't really think. But again, a brilliant man like Dr. Dre, he is not, again, as I see it, going to be mentally impaired, because again, if he's sending out messages like this and is still able to function, then again, I can tell you from my experience at 7 years old, and now I'm 47, he's going to be all right. So I look at Dr. Dre, and again, I may not like the way he's treated the black community, but I wouldn't wish this on my own worst enemy, because I know how a brain aneurysm can change your life, and it can change the way people in your family see you. It can change the way your people see you in social circles. It can change the way you can have relationships, and it can even keep you from having relationships, because a lot of times it's hard to gain respect from women in some cases, because they find out about it and then they don't really want to see you as somebody they respect. And this is something, all this is stuff I have dealt with for the last 40 years. And I look at Dr. Dre and I feel really bad for him, because here is a respected man, and if he does not have the support system in place to help him, he is going to be struggling not only with this brain aneurysm, but with many of the psychological and mental health issues as related to people's perceptions about him, and having to deal with a lot of people trying to do things like trying to get over on him because they finally think that, oh, he's got some sort of mental impairment. But in actuality, there's nothing wrong with Dr. Dre, and all he needs, again, is a good support system, because that's something he's going to need when you're dealing with a brain aneurysm. And if I didn't have my family with me, I don't know what I would do, and I thank God I did have my family with me, because this is something that when you're out here and you've experienced this, it completely changes your life. And I have been dealing with that change, again, for the last 40 years. So I know where Dr. Dre is right now. And I wouldn't wish this on him, and I hope that he does better, and I hope that he can get through this. But he's going to need all the support he can get as related to this brain aneurysm, and he's going to need all the love and support his family can give him, because his life is going to change from this point on. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up one of the over 70 plus books on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, or my men's issues books like The Man Crisis and Stop Simpin', you can find all of those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, E-Steam Blast from the Past. Hell's aspiring angel takes on her demonic doppelganger in this action-packed, time-traveling E-Steam series adventure. Get E-Steam Blast from the Past with a bonus E-Steam comic book, No Good Deed, in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers everywhere.